Avast, ye scurvy landlubbers, and welcome back to Fires of Kaladesh. Today we're going to be looking at one of my personal favourite tribal decks, which is a pirate-themed tribal. You're going to excuse all the terrible puns that will be coming out throughout this episode. So I have gone for the rather gorgeous Malcolm and Breeches partner commanders. We'll go over Malcolm first. He's only 2 in a blue. He's a legendary flying siren pirate. 2/2, and whenever one or more pirates you control deal damage to your opponents, you create a treasure token for each opponent dealt damage this way. And then Breeches is 3 in a red, a legendary Goblin pirate for 3/3. He's got Menace, and whenever one or more pirates you control deal damage to your opponents, exile the top card of each of those opponents' libraries. You may play those cards this turn, and you may spend mana as though it was mana of any colour to cast those spells. So you can probably already kind of guess the scene which we're going to be going for here. Obviously very, very strong on the creature front. We're going to see if we can go wide as much as possible to get around everyone's defences, create as much treasure every single turn as possible, and then cast as much of your opponent's cards in order to beat them down. So let's get on to the deck itself then. We are running 28 basic lands, 14 mountains, 14 islands, and we've gone for 6 non-basics in this particular setup. The essential and always useful Evolving Wilds, tap and sack. Search live for a basic land, put on the battlefield, tapped. Its twin brother, the Terramorphic Expanse, tap and sack. Search for a basic land, put it on tapped. Myriad Landscape, again enters battlefield tapped. You can tap for a colourless, or pay 2 and tap and sack. Search live for up to 2 basic lands that share a land type. I'll put them on the battlefield tapped. Swiftwater Cliffs is just a nice simple one, enters the battlefield tapped, and when it enters you gain a life, and you get a red or a blue. Unclaimed Territory is obviously a pirate choice. You can add a colourless, or add 1 mana of any colour to cast a creature of the chosen type. And then last of all, obviously this is a very fast running deck. If you need to get to the late game, you need to get stuff through, Rogue's Passage is always an essential one, just to make anyone unblockable until the end of the turn. Which obviously, when you're making treasures and exiling cards from your opponent's library, you want to make sure you're getting through as much as possible. Okay, so we're going to move on to the artifacts next. And start off with one from Kaldheim, rather lovely one here. Very underrated, I think. Cosmos Elixir. It's only 4 to cast. At the beginning of your end step, draw a card if your life total is greater than your starting life total. Otherwise, gain 2 life. It's just a nice little potential card draw every turn. If not, life gain every turn. Simple bit of mana ramp here with a Sky Diamond. Not the best ones in the world, but beggars can't be choosers. 2, enters battlefield tap, tap for a blue. Next up we have Gonti's Ether Heart. It's a legendary artifact for 6 to cast. Whenever Gonti's Ether Heart or whenever artifact enters a battlefield under your control, you're going to get 2 energy counters. And then you can pay 8 energy counters and exile this to take an extra turn. Now when obviously this comes in, this is going to provide you with 2. If you can get through to each of your opponents, you're going to get another 3 treasure artifacts that turn, which will of course give you another 6 energy tokens, which will give you the exact amount in 1 turn to be able to give yourself that extra turn. I'm not going to lie, I'm not the biggest fan of extra turn cards. There are literally 2 in this deck. And this one just because of the synergy in the artifacts, and the other one because it's a pirate, of course. So then we have a Gleaming Barrier. It's a 2 to cast artifact wall. It's a 0/4 defender, but when it dies it's going to create you a treasure. So it's just a nice simple early game jump blocker that even when it dies it's still going to provide you with uses and keep your mana ramp high. Then we have the classic 3 to cast Is It Locket? Yes, yes it is. You can tap for a blue or a red and pay 4 blue and or red in any combination to sack it and draw 2 cards. Arcane Sigma, an essential in any multicoloured deck. It's 2 to cast, tap, add 1 mana of any colour in your commander's colour identity. Hero's Blade is a nice simple artifact for 2 to cast. The equipped creature is going to get +3, +2. But the lovely thing with this is whenever a legendary creature enters a battlefield under your control, you can attach it for free, because it's normally in a very, very high equip cost of 4. But see, if you can get this out turn 2, then Malcolm comes onto the field next turn, you have a 5/4 flyer, which is going to provide you with additional treasure and a lot of problems for your opponents. Next up, we've got the Gold Vein Pick. A equipped creature gets +1/+1, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you get a treasure. Shouldn't really have to explain this one in too much depth. It's just about making as much treasure as you possibly can. Speaking of treasure, let's have a treasure map. For 2 to cast, you can pay 1, tap and scry 1, put a landmark counter on it. Then if it has 3 or more landmark counters, remove those counters and transform the treasure map. You create 3 colourless treasure artifacts. Tap, sack, add 1 mana of any colour. And then of course when you transform, you get the Treasure Cove, which is 1 colourless 2 mana pool. You can tap and sack a treasure to draw a card, which card draw is obviously going to win you games every single time. Oh, fiddly as hell. So yeah, the treasures aren't just going to be used for mana. The Fire Diamond to match the Sky Diamond from earlier. Simple mana rock. And then last of all, Prying Blade, very similar to the Gold Vein Pick. It's just +1/+0 for this one, but whenever it deals combat damage, you're going to create treasure. And we sure like that. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. I will slow down on the puns. So, we'll move on to enchantments. First things first, we're going to have the Curse of Verbosity. I'm assuming I'm saying that right. So for 2 and a blue, you're going to enchant a player, and whenever the enchanted player is attacked, draw a card. Each opponent attacking that player does the same. Yes, it's not the nicest thing to be able to give your opponents card draw, but it stops everyone from attacking you. It gives them reasons to attack one of your opponents and get them off the board first, and will give you more answers for later on in the game. That lovely Pillow Fort propaganda. 2 and a blue, creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 for each creature they control that's attacking you. Again, a very nice way just to make sure that people aren't swinging towards you, and will hopefully veer them towards anybody else on the table. A rather beautiful one here from the recent Kaldheim set, Reflections of Lich Jar. It's 4 and a blue. As it enters the battlefield, we're going to choose a creature type. Pirates. And whenever you cast a spell of the chosen type, you get a copy of that spell, and a copy of a permanent spell becomes a token. So obviously being able to double up your pirates every single time, especially when obviously the aim is to go wide with this deck, this is an essential combo piece for you, to be honest. If you can get it last longer than a turn. Not had that myself yet. Another curse, and a lovely one for red. You'll see this in most of my red decks. It's the Curse of Opulence for only 1 red, enchant player. And whenever the enchanted player is attacked, you're going to make yourself a gold token, apparently. And you can set that to add 1 mana of any colour, and each opponent will obviously do the same. Not as useful as the treasures, obviously, but it's still going to be a nice mana ramp for you. And then last of all, we have Storm the Vault. There's 2, a blue and a red for a legendary enchantment. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, again you're going to create a treasure. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 5 or more artifacts, you're going to transform Storm the Vault into Vault of Catlacan, a legendary land. You can tap for 1 mana of any colour, or tap to add 1 blue to your mana pool for each artifact you control. Which obviously, as you can probably imagine, with the amount of treasures we're going to be making in this deck, you're going to be adding a lot of mana with this one. Lovely, lovely little piece that one is. And next up, we're going to move on to the sorceries. We have a couple here for card draw. So we're going for Distant Melody. Again, as I said, with the amount of creatures we're going to have on the board, this is an absolutely lovely one for draw. It's only 3 and a blue. Choose a creature type, draw a card for each permanent you control of that type. So simple, yeah. Really, really useful later on in the game. Rush of Knowledge is 4 and a blue, so a bit more pricey. You draw cards equal to the highest converted mana costs among permanents you control. So the only thing, obviously, a lot of these pirates are very, very cheap to cast, so you're going to run out of cards in your hand reasonably quickly, unfortunately. and you're not much of a threat when you're top decking all the time. Next up, we've got a bit of removal. It's the classic roast. For only 1 and a red, you can deal 5 damage to target creature without flying. And then we've got Lava Coil for 1 and a red again. It does 4 damage to target creature, but if that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. It's just a nice little option. You don't get a lot of exile options in red. And then Raven Form is another one from Kaldheim. 2 and a blue, exile target artifact or creature. Its controller creates a 1/1 blue bird creature token with flying. And even bet you can foretell this one for only 1 blue mana. Nice artifact removal there, especially for mono blue. They really don't get a lot of exiling artifacts, if any at all. Next up is, of course, the instant spells. We're going to go with that ever popular red one. Lightning Bolt, the classic. 1 red, 3 damage to target creature or player. Just a nice simple bit of removal. Abrade is a nice optional. 1 and a red to either 3 damage to target creature or destroy an artifact. Pongify, destroy target creature. It can't be regenerated. Its controller creates a 3/3 green ape creature token. Obviously it's not nice to give your opponent a creature, but sometimes you can't help it. If they have something which is ridiculously big and it's causing you problems every single turn, surely a 3/3 on the board is a better option. And then last of all for our instance is a Reality Shift. Absolutely beautiful instant here. 1 and a blue, exile target creature. Its controller manifests the top cards of his or her library. That's where the player puts the top card of his or her library onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature. If it's a creature card, it can be turned face up anytime for its mana cost. Obviously, really nice to be able to exile for only a creature for only 2 mana. But this is especially nice if you know your opponent's using cards like Worldly Tutor or anything which lets you search and then put to the top of your library. So obviously you can then remove a problem and then remove a future problem as well at the same time and completely mess up their search. And then finally, we're going to move on to the massive amount of 39 creatures today. And we're going to start off with the colourful ones. We have Captain Vargas Wrath. He's 1 blue and a red. He's a 1/1. Legendary Orc Pirate. And whenever he attacks, pirate you control will get +1/+1 until end of turn for each time you cast a commander from the command zone in this game. Which obviously, having your partners as well, means that this is really quickly going to build up and give all your creatures a lot of additional buffs. Only downside is the fact he is only a 1/1 himself, so he is quite easy to remove, unfortunately. Zara, Renegade Recruiter, is our other multicoloured. She's another legendary for 5 converted mana cost. 4/3 flying. Whenever she attacks, you can look at defending player's hand. You may put a creature card from it onto the battlefield under your control, tapped and attacking that player or a planeswalker they control, and then of course return that creature to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. Just obviously a nice one. Flying is always a lovely option, and being able to potentially cast your opponent's cards just for the turn and swing them at them is a nice option, especially if they've got beautiful ETB triggers. On to the blue creatures, we have the Azure Fleet Admiral for 3 and a blue. He's a 3/3. ETB is the Monarch, always good. And the lovely thing with this one is you can only be blocked by creatures the Monarch controls. So obviously the second you get that monarchy taken away from you, he will always guarantee to get it back. Do like that one. Deadeye Quartermaster is 3 and a blue for a 2/2. So enters the battlefield, you can search your library for an equipment or vehicle card, reveal it, put it in your hand. Obviously most of the time it's the Hero's Blade for this one. I don't run a lot of equipment cards, but it's just nice to be able to have that option. Cartcel Courser is a nice cheapie. 1 and a blue, 2/1. It gets flying as long as it's attacking. Sailor of Means is 2 and a blue for a nice chump blocker with 1/4 defense. And as he enters, you can create a treasure token as well. So he's going to help you out in lots of different cases. The Departed Deckhand is 1 and a blue for a 2/2. Yeah. When it becomes the target of a spell, sacrifice it, but he can't be blocked except by spirits. And for 3 and a blue, another target creature you control can't be blocked except by spirits this turn. Again, as I mentioned with the Rogue's Passage, it's just a nice way to be able to get your creatures through, to get those treasures, exile those cards from your opponent's libraries. And then we have the Corsair Captain for 2 and a blue. It's a 2/2 human pirate. As he enters the battlefield, you can create a treasure token, and he's going to give all other pirates you control +1/+1. Merchant Raiders, or what I blatantly think is Captain Elizabeth Swan there from the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, is a rather evil piece of kit. 3 and a blue for a 2/4. Whenever it or another pirate enters the battlefield under your control, tap up to 1 target creature. That creature does not untap for as long as you control Merchant Raiders. Give it a couple of turns, and this is going to be the most hated thing on the board, is just slowly tapping down every single creature your opponents control. Beautiful. Dreamcaller Sirens next for 2 and 2 blue, 3/3 flash and flying. It can block only creatures with flying, not the greatest, but as it enters, if you control another pirate, which, let's be honest, you probably will, tap up to 2 non-land permanents. Kite Sail Skirmisher for 3 and a blue for a 3/1 flyer. When he attacks, another target creature attacking the same player or planeswalker will also get flying until end of turn. And you can encore this one for 4 and a blue, so when he dies you can exile it from your graveyard. For each opponent you create a token copy that attacks this turn if able. They'll gain haste, but you've got to sacrifice them at the end of the turn. But again, not a lot of people run a lot of flying, so it's just a good way to be able to get around your opponent's defences. Shipwreck Looter is a nice cheap one, 1 and a blue, 2/1. Just giving you that option there with the raid. When it enters the battlefield, if you're attacked with a creature this turn, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. Siren Lookout is 2 and a blue for a 1/2 flyer. As it enters the battlefield, you're going to explore. Or obviously, reveal the top card of your library, put the card into your hand if it's a land. Otherwise, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, and put the card back or put it into your graveyard. And here is my other extra turn card. It's, of course, the Time Stream Navigator. For only 1 and a blue, 1/1. Ascend. If you control 10 or more permanents, you get the City's Blessing for the rest of the game. And you can pay 2 and 2 blue, tap, put the Time Stream Navigator on the bottom of its owner's library, and take an extra turn after this one. Obviously, only activatable if you have the City's Blessing. Siren Stormtamer is a simple 1 blue, 1/1 flyer. You can pay a blue to sacrifice it to counter target spell or ability that targets you or a creature you control. Stormfleet Spy is another simple one. 2 and a blue, 2/2, raid. When it enters the battlefield, if you attack with a creature this turn, draw a card. Nice and simple. Gotta love the card draw. Daring Saboteur is a 1 and a blue for a 2/1 human pirate. You can pay 2 and a blue to make sure that he can't be blocked this turn, and whenever he deals combat damage to a player, you can draw a card and discard a card. Crafty Cutpurse is a recent addition to this one, for only 3 and a blue. He's a 2/2 human pirate with flash, and as he enters, each token that would be created under an opponent's control this turn is created under your control instead. So obviously there's several situations where this one's going to come in useful. Whenever your opponent plays an Avenger of Zendikar, flashes out, nick all of his plants, makes him pretty useless. If your opponent runs a Hull Breacher, puts them out, stops you from drawing loads of cards even, to make treasure. And then of course you make all the treasures yourself. So many uses, such a lovely hidden gem, that one. And speak of the devil, it's the Hull Breacher himself. 2 and a blue, 3/2 with flash, and if an opponent would draw a card except the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, instead you're going to create a treasure token. Stormfleet Aerialist is another flying with 1 and a blue, 1/2, and it's going to enter the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter if you attack a creature this turn. Anthin Mutineer is a beautiful 3 and a blue for a 3/3 Salamander pirate. As he enters the battlefield, you can exile up to 1 target non-salamander creature. The creature's controller will create a 4/3 blue salamander warrior creature token. And again, you can encore this one for 4 and 2 blue, which obviously if you're playing a big game of Commander with several opponents, you'll be able to exile 3 creatures for only 6 mana. Not too bad at all. And then, yes, I know he's not the best card in here, but he does have one of the coolest names. It's the Ghost of Ramirez de Pietro. He's 2 and a blue for a 2/3 legendary spirit pirate, and he can't be blocked by creatures with toughness 3 or greater. Bit confusing on this part. Whenever he deals combat damage to a player, choose up to 1 target card in the graveyard that was discarded or put there from a library this turn. put that card into its owner's hand. Can't honestly think of a lot of uses for that second part. If you know of some and I'm just being stupid, let me know in the comments. Move on to the red creatures. We have the Emberwild Captain for 3 in a red. He is a Djinn pirate for 4/2. Enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. And whenever an opponent attacks you while you're the monarch, he's going to deal damage to that player equal to the number of cards in their hand. Just again a nice deterrent when you do get the monarch, for people not to attack you. Stormfleet Arsonist is a little bit pricey at 4 in a red for a 4/4. But when he enters the battlefield, if you're attacked with a creature this turn, target opponent's going to sacrifice a permanent. Obviously you can be really mean on this one, just pick on somebody who only has 1 permanent left, maybe their commander. Fathom Fleet Swordjack is 3 and a red for a 4/3 pirate, and whenever he attacks, it's going to deal damage to the player or planeswalker it's attacking equal to the number of artifacts you control. And again, you can encore for 5 and a red. So obviously if you've got a massive treasure load, he is going to do severe damage when he attacks. Captain Lanare Storm, has to be said that way, it's the rules, is 2 and a red for a 2/2 legendary human pirate with haste. And whenever she attacks, you're going to create a treasure. And whenever you sack a treasure, she's going to get +1/+0 until end of turn. Simple, beautiful synergy. Coastline Marauders is 2 and a red for a 0/3 pirate with trample, but when it attacks, it's going to get +1/+0 for each land defending player controls. Obviously, early on, he's not going to be the greatest one in your hand, but come late game, he is potentially going to be swinging for a lot of damage. And even better, you can encore him for 6. Lots of problems, lots of opponents, and with trample. Boarding Party is 5 and a red for a 6/3 haste and cascade. It's one of the only cascade cards in the deck, admittedly, but it's just nice. It's one of the bigger power ones. Goblin Trailblazer is 1 and a red for a menace 2/1. It's nice and simple. If you get him out early, he can't be blocked, hopefully, and will create you those extra treasures. Dargo the Shipwrecker is one of the more pricey ones at 6 and a red. He's a 7/5 legendary giant pirate, but as an additional cost to cast, you may sacrifice any number of artifacts and or creatures, and the spell is going to cost 2 less for each permanent sacrifice this way, and 2 less to cast for each other artifact or creature you've already sacrificed this turn. And he has trample. So the beautiful thing with him is sacrifice 3 treasures, you're only going to be paying 1 red to get them onto the field. And a 7/5 with trample is always useful. Next up is the Crimson Fleet Commodore. He's 3 and a red, an ogre pirate, 5/2 trample. But most importantly, when he enters, you're going to become the monarch. As I said many times, you need that card draw here. 1 red for an impulsive pilferer next. He's a goblin pirate, 1/1. When he dies, you're going to create a treasure. You can encore him as well. Might not necessarily be worth it, to be perfectly honest with you. For 4 mana, you're only going to be creating 3 treasures maximum, really, if you're playing a 4-player commander game. So, very dependent. I only really like him personally because he's a 1-drop, 1 to cast. Very quick. Swings out, gets you the gold. Kari Zev, the Skyship Raider, is next. She's a 1/3, 1 and a red, first strike and menace. Whenever she attacks, you're going to create a 2/1 legendary red monkey creature named Ragathan. That's tapped and attacking. You can exile him at the end of combat. Lightning Rig Crew is one of my unsung heroes in this deck. So for 2 and a red, you get a 0/5 Goblin Pirate. You can tap to deal 1 damage to each opponent. And then whenever you cast a pirate spell, you're going to untap him. But obviously, the synergy this card has with your 2 commanders is literally disgusting. So to start your turn, let's say, you're going to tap, deal 1 damage to each opponent, create a treasure for each opponent, deal damage that way, and then exile a card for each of them. Then you're going to play your pirate from your hand, untap him, again, tap again, create even more treasure, exile even more cards, keep going until you've got no more pirates to cast. Then you get to your combat phase, swing out with loads of pirates, get even more treasure. Literally one of the best synergy cards in this deck. Coercive Recruiter is a 4 and a red for a 4/3 Orc Pirate. Whenever he or another pirate enters the battlefield under your control, gain control of target creature until end of turn, untap that creature. Until end of turn, it gains haste and becomes a pirate in addition to its other types. Always a good way to get rid of those big problems if you can't destroy them, and just simply turn around your opponents instead, cause them damage, and make more treasures. Coming down to the last couple, we have the Rigging Runner. He's 1 red for a Goblin Pirate, 1/1 first strike. And he's going to enter the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter if you attack to a creature this turn. Absolutely gorgeous for 1 mana. And then last of all is the Fanatical Firebrand for 1 red Goblin Pirate. He's a 1/1 with haste. And you can tap, sacrifice Firebrand. It'll deal 1 damage to target creature or player. Which is obviously a nice way just to be able to ping off those annoying little ones that your opponent doesn't like to block with, but are constantly affecting the board. So, I hope you enjoyed the Pirate Rundown. Obviously, there's a lot of different ways which you can go with this deck. A lot of people lean more into the theft side of things, steal your opponent's creatures, put as many sack outlets in there as well as you can. I used to run that quite heavy myself, but I do have a rather beautiful mono red deck that is a theft-inspired one. Will be coming on at a later date. If you like this one, please give a like. Hit that share button. If you're not already subscribed, give us a subscribe. And hopefully we will see you next time.